Okay. Hi, I'm Tom Pickering. I'm somebody who's led 200 company turnarounds, and I'd like to share some alternative thoughts on company turnaround, which I hope people find interesting. So first of all, the financials are absolutely critical, but I think it's all about fixing the right problem. And I want to share some thoughts that we've found work in getting businesses back to cash within 2 weeks. Most turnaround practitioners treat the symptoms such as funding and such like. I think our focus is always to create cash without raising money to get back to a position whereby you can have a sensible discussion with the stakeholders. I think the real issue, though, in this current climate is that a lot of business owners are getting seriously duped, and it's a psychology problem. And what that means is that there's the challenge and the actions get misaligned, and the integrity of the team can come under fire. So the first question is, how do you know if somebody's thinking? And what are people doing if they're not thinking? I think the other part of this is also what are people not talking about. So if you talk about a blind spot, people are pretty unaware of blind spots. But an example of a blind spot is who doesn't like Trump? And for those people who don't like Trump, what's good about Trump? And you can see that in a business context, I hope, where there are topics that people don't talk about. I think the other challenge with this is, when you look at a business, it's about understanding the journey. So what are the challenges that business owners have actually faced, and what are the actions they've taken? And from that, you can see how a business has got there, and that's about understanding the thinking. An example of that is a business that moved from tiling distribution into retail because they faced a challenge rather than address the issue. And I think that's important to understand, because change really requires a shift in thinking, without which nothing really changes. The other side of this, I think, is that people are vastly underutilised, and I'm passionate about getting back to utilising people. And there's a big challenge around people versus data, a lot of focus on data, when in fact people do not need much data. And the turnarounds that we lead, there's normally only 1 or 2 KPIs to get a business back onto track, and the complexity can be handled by the team on whatever format they like. So I think the other aspect of this is all the mantras around, in an organisation, very important to understand, we can't find the right people, or such things like that. These create blind spots, as per the previous example. The second thing is around testing capability. Who can do what? You normally find people in the wrong seats, and when you get the environment right, the right people come to the fore. So I think the challenge is really to match the people to the opportunities and give them the opportunity to do that. And when you do that, you're actually offloading the risk and letting people think things through and developing capability. The other side of this as well is a psychological issue, which is around core capability. Normally the core capability is something that people are familiar with and they give away. Yet, a lot of what we do is putting the pricing up and start charging for things that are missing off invoices. For example, a print business that we turned around wasn't really a print business. They actually distributed and stuck vinyl or windows and provided all the account management, but sold print and nothing else. I think the other aspect of this is around distorting strategies. So the mantras around growth and domination, which have been the mantras for a long time, driving businesses. And you'll still hear everybody talking about growth, when in fact there's a huge implication for sustainability. And of course, MBA is all about growth, so it's difficult to get away from that one. Technology is another big challenge as well. People are saying tech is the future and digital disruption, as if it's a good thing, when in fact the reality of a lot of tech is it's destroying markets and destroying revenue. And unlike previous waves of innovation, it's not actually creating new industries. New industries in the past for farmers created tractors, and tractors, there was an industry that was created around tractors. Technology is not like that. It's largely a service, and it's parasitic, and it's feudal, feeding on the productive parts of the economy. And I think also the thinking around we want to be the next Amazon. If you look at Price's law, you'll see there's 0 or 1 to 10 to the minus 24 chance of becoming another Amazon, and I'm happy to explain that some other time. I think the other thing around this is the woke dialogue, which is silencing, and what this means is it's really a victimhood culture, which is creates scapegoats and punishment, and that punishment comes in the form of sort of tech marginalisation, and this kills innovation. And you find people labelling things inaccurately but very aggressively, and people find that very difficult to cope with. So I think what this does is it creates fear, and when people are fearful, they drive in the rear-view mirror and they do absolutely everything to get back to where they were before. So in terms of facing some of the shifts within the pandemic, I think there's been quite a number of things that have changed which are really meaningful and they matter. The first one is creating work. The second one is increasing prices to reduce consumption, reusing things to protect the planet, people relationships to reduce suicide. There's a pandemic of suicide as well at the moment. Reducing online to regain self, local and community, and a focus on not so much winning but collaboration, local collaboration, working together. And the last one is really around acknowledging people for who they are and listening to their different views. So they're the sort of things which drive, which are the shifts that are taking place yet. And this is really around profit and relationships versus growth and domination. And this is really where the misalignment is. And you know, organisations you'll still find talking about digital disruption and growth when in fact the shift has taken place, and there aren't many businesses making those shifts. I'm pleased to say that I think we're in a phase of regrowth, and one of the things I've been doing rather than turning business around is actually regrowing businesses using these mantras, and it's been hugely successful, I'm delighted to say. So I think the other aspect of this is critical thinking. So we've got other new things coming into the market like Bitcoin, which seriously needs to be challenged. Cryptocurrency. Investors are pumping this up when there's really very little content. And again, you get targeted. There's a whole echo chamber around this, you know, the bit boys versus coiners versus no coiners, and the echo chambers. And it's very similar sort of dialogue to wokeness, and you get battered quite hard or get accused of being a Luddite or something. So these are really important things to understand. I think as well, you know, in terms of simple actions we can take, we can, you know, in terms of, for example, sustainability, we can decide where we buy stuff. And, you know, at the simplest level, retail is very important to the UK, and yet there's been a big shift to online retail and absolutely destroying high streets. You've only got to walk up a high street on a Saturday and it's still in a bad way. So technology, the reality is actually screwing markets, reducing profits, and it's creating a race to the bottom, which largely is around price, and that's clearly not a viable strategy. So I think the critical thing is really to get to grips. You know, business are about teams, are about people, and it's about that team creating the sanity that we need to, you know, steer us, as we're highly dependent on each other. And also when we get together, we need to check our decisions, because that's how we steer the ship. And watch these mantras and watch the blind spots, which I've just touched on. There's a little bit more to it than that. But the way forward is to take new action. But of course, to do that, you need to take new perspectives. And so this is quite an interesting challenge. And the new action, of course, creates immediate results. And new immediate action creates cash. And of course, tech doesn't create cash. It's people. It's that shift in people, not tech. And relationships as well are critical to profit. So it's really around moving away from the growth and domination mantra to profit and relationships, which are two heavily entwined things. And this requires, in our experience, a different skill set, which we've spent a long time developing over the last 20 years when we've applied this in company turnaround. And I think the way this manifests itself in the new now, with people working by themselves, is a little bit concerning, where people believe they've got 87% of people believe they've got the right skills, and yet 64% are working more independently. And that's a paradox, because we're highly dependent, and this is really where hubris gets fueled. It's a sort of self-delusion situation, which is quite concerning, and that, of course, takes businesses off track. So it's vital to develop the skills in order to take new action. So, and I think wisdom is a collective thing. It's around teams and it's around relationships, without which we don't really have the ability to make profit. So I think the last question I'd like to leave with you guys is, do you have the skills to take new action? And what do those new actions look like? So I hope you find that helpful, guys. Welcome any questions.